So now college planning is a subset of financial planning. So I still do full service financial planning, but I started working with families on, similar to what you mentioned, where you help families. There's a huge need for people to figure out college. And I realized that nobody understood all the rules. So I started learning more about it, and I got involved in more and more college planning. And then I realized that I had done a lot of seminars on general financial planning. And I also realized seminars and workshops and material on college planning got a lot of attention, and I enjoyed doing it. So college planning is very complex, or can be, based on need-based aid and merit aid and all the different tools and so forth. And I can add a lot of value there. Most financial advisors, most accountants, most don't have a clue and are giving sometimes what I would say is flat out bad advice.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for listening. We're rounding the corner, nearing the end of season 5. Don't forget, we'll be back in February next year, 2025. We've got a different show for you today, a cool show. We got Brad Baldridge on the show today. He's a financial planner. Some of you are interested in that, but he's a financial planner for college. We're going to talk about his career path and how he found his path and how you might find your path. We're going to talk about starting a business and focusing on adding value. It's what you got to do. Add value more than what you're good at. What can you add value at? But Brad's here to talk about financing college, paying for college, how private school could be cheaper, things you can do if you own a business. So we got a little bit of a different show. We're here to help you get through college. If you're not through already, go back to college if you want to. Welcome to the show. Hit subscribe. Thank you for coming on the Edge of Excellence. Well, Brad, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Edge of Excellence. Thanks for making time to share your insight in how to pay for college and maybe how to pay for grad school, because we've got a lot of people in our audience that are still in college, still having to pay for college, maybe going to grad school. And I appreciate you coming out to help them out today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to get into, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it, by the way, all these professionals. Brad's got Taming, the High Cost of College podcast. He's got one of the nation's leading financial planning businesses to teach families best ways to plan. And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the podcast. We're going to get into following your passion and becoming a consultant, because that's what Brad does. We're going to talk about that. He's consulting in an area that most people don't think of. We're going to talk about how to pay for college. But before we do, I got to find out from you what I always find out from every guest. Brad, what is your definition of excellence?
Ooh, yeah, there's a challenge, right? Too high, I think. It actually slows me down, right? I'm running into that problem of it's got to be perfect, and what it really needs to be is done. Because if you don't get it out to the world, it doesn't really matter if it's perfect or not. And but excellence, I think, in my mind, is what the customer or the client needs, whatever that means, right? Not necessarily what I think, what I like, but what they need and what they want and what's appropriate for them.
So excellence is in the eye of the beholder. And you brought up something interesting. We did an episode on DISC, and I think it's episode 3 or 4 or 5. If you're listening right now, you can look it up, DISC. And a lot of times, if you're on the high S or high C side of the scale, those are people that go into accounting, go into law, go into medical, go into research, go into all the things that I would never do, go into law, detail contract people. They might spend too much time making it excellent and never get it out the door. And I remember, was it Robert Kiyosaki, not the Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy, but the guy that was number 3 at Apple, once said, when I was watching him give a speech, said the thing about Apple is they got it out before it was ready. And he said one of his 10 points was ship it before it's perfect. So oftentimes excellence is too high a bar for a product or a service. And you got to focus on what the client needs and when the client needs it. Like that, haven't heard that one before. We're going to get into all this paying for college stuff, but Brad, you're an interesting person. I want to hear about your life. I want to hear about how you got into consulting. So before we get into your profession of helping families and college financial expertise and helping college kids find their dreams, which is what I like to do, That's why I have Brad on the show today. He's kind of in that same realm as me, working with people, helping them find their dreams. I got to know what life was like for you in high school and college. What were you doing? How did you end up where you were going? Where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in a small town in Wisconsin, Mayville. I lived right on the edge of town. I literally could take my BB gun and walk out the backyard, step over a fence, and I was in a cornfield.
Okay.
And, so we're right on the edge of town. So that was my
Why did you
upbringing
take
of
your
small
BB gun
town.
to the cornfield? Why were you taking your BB gun to the cornfield?
Well, you couldn't shoot it in town, so you had to go to the cornfield.
Oh, okay.
Right?
In
It's
a
against
little
the law
town,
to shoot guns
I
in
think
town.
in Mayville you could shoot your BB gun in town. It's not like it's a shotgun. All right, so
Well,
you lived on the edge of a small town, and it wasn't one of those towns where there was one high school and everybody knew everybody.
Oh, absolutely. It was one high school for our town plus a couple neighboring towns
Okay.
in order to get enough kids to fill a high school. So it was a relatively large school, but I think there was 110 or something in my graduating class, but half the people showed up on a bus.
And how far do they have to come?
5-10 miles. I mean, it was
Okay, not too bad.
not
I've heard
bad.
some stories from Wisconsin. Shout out to Wisconsin. We have College Works that sponsors this show. We have a big business in Wisconsin. Hopefully they're knocking on your door. Do you still live in Wisconsin?
I do. I'm in the Milwaukee area now.
Oh my God, Milwaukee people, get out there and knock on Brad's door. Give him some College Works flyers. So you're in one of these small towns. And when you were there, were you trying to get ahead in life? Were you thinking about college? Were you thinking about paying for college? Was it already setting into your mind?
Yeah. Well, I have an engineering degree, and that was pretty much always my path. I did well in math and science, in high school and that type of thing. So anybody that knew me could say, you're going to end up being an engineer, and they'd have been right. I mean, and a lot of parents have that situation, right? They've got that math science kid that they know is on the way to engineering or physics or something like that. And I was that kind of kid, right? I enjoyed math and science, and it came relatively easy to me, and so then I, went off to college and studied mechanical engineering. And
where'd you go to school?
UW Platteville, so a smaller
I know Platteville.
University of Wisconsin school.
I know Platteville.
I looked around. I looked into the big city here in Milwaukee at a couple of the engineering schools, and they were right downtown. And from a kid that grew up in a small town, and you look around and say, there's not a green space on this whole campus. I mean, there's that's 1/4 of one city block. It's got 3 trees on it, and they consider that nature or something. It was just weird for me.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Platteville, which is a smaller school, not in a big city, on the edge of a smaller city. And it was a great fit for me and worked out really well.
And you did engineering.
And I, got my engineering degree, and that, so that was a great first step. And
how long were you an engineer?
4 years.
Okay. So I tell people all the time that, you're going to college and you know what you want to do for a living. That's fantastic. You're probably wrong. I tell people it's pretty unfair. Your mom's ironing your underwear and cutting the crust off your bread and ringing the bell to get you to come in from shooting birds and prairie dogs over the fence there in Mayville. And, all of a sudden, pick your major, Brad, pick your major. Figure out what you want to do. And Brad and I were talking before we started recording about my son, who is upstairs. Wake up, Jake Stewart, upstairs sleeping because he just graduated from college. And my wife thinks he's kind of scared. He's got a wonderful degree. He's got a wonderful resume. He's done a lot of cool things, but he hasn't. Part of it was he took 30 units this last semester, which, man, I don't know anybody that's taken 30 units in a semester. So he hasn't gotten going with the job application stuff yet, but it's kind of scary. And he doesn't really know what he wants to do. So you all your life, like somebody listening right now, maybe from Mayville, maybe from UW Platteville, all your life are kind of being led to that engineering, either by your own experience, by your own kind of fondness for math and physics, or by others. And 4 years out of school, what happened to engineering?
Well, a couple of different things happened. In my spare time, I got involved in rental real estate. And from there, I got involved in part-time financial planning. And they are all, heavily in numbers and planning and, very similar to engineering. It just, so what I learned in engineering can be very much applied to financial planning and that type of thing. and I enjoyed doing that. And I did not enjoy the corporate culture at where I worked. So the corporate culture was a challenge for me in that, if you weren't at your desk working at 8 o'clock when the bell rang, it was troublesome. And at 5 o'clock when the next bell rang, they didn't make sure they pushed you out the door. Then you could stay as long as you wanted. So if I worked at a more progressive company that had flex time and it didn't have those old strict rules and that kind of stuff, I probably might still be an engineer. Okay. But because I just didn't get along with the boss and the structure and that type of thing, and I got involved in financial planning, and when I got let go from that engineering job because I had other stuff going on, I started having bad attitude. It showed. I got let go.
And I got to throw one of my yellow flags out. I got to find these yellow flags. Yellow flag, not quite a yellow card. I don't find that people have bad attitudes. I find employers bring out the bad attitudes in people. So it just wasn't a great fit. You had a great attitude in the beginning, but the culture wasn't a good fit. And I think that's interesting if you're listening in the car right now on 1.5 speed or 2 speed, which I always recommend for this podcast. You might be thinking, wow, I'm getting bored in my job. I don't like my culture. And, you do got to blame yourself first. And I appreciate that, Brad. You do got to stop and say, hey, what's going on with me? Is there something about me? Because the grass may not be greener on the other side. But every once in a while, your path takes a strange change in direction. Now, what I say is if you're moving onward and upward, kicking ass, working hard, doing your best, when you turn right or left, you're still kind of on that onward and upward trajectory. If you're sitting at home smoking weed right now, wondering, oh, why is my boss so mean to me? Maybe you're the problem, but I know Brad, I don't think he's the problem. There just wasn't a fit. So all of a sudden, and I see this happen, people are like, oh my God, I don't have a job anymore. Now, millennials, this show is not for millennials. Millennials, we're not talking to you. You don't move before you get a job. You don't hope it works out. You make a plan, but you're sitting there and you have some other things going on and the culture didn't fit. I will say too, because I know you're an entrepreneur, when the boss thing doesn't work out, maybe you should be an entrepreneur. When you find yourself unemployable, maybe you should be an entrepreneur. When you don't like people telling you what to do, maybe you should be an entrepreneur. So you had this entrepreneur thing going on the side of investing in real estate, which I always think is crazy. A couple of years out of college, you're investing in real estate. Where the hell you get the money to do that?
Hustled. There was a pre-internet. This is, of course, I'm old. So pre-internet, there was these entrepreneurs that the how to get rich in real estate crowd. The only way that they could get out there and do it was to do seminars in the local hotels.
And sell videotapes.
Yes, they sell books and videotapes and that kind of stuff. And I signed on. Charles Givens was the name. I had a buddy come with me, and we both got involved in buying real estate. And by the time I was 25, I was collecting like 11 or 12 rent checks.
So the key to real estate, if you're listening, if you're in California, it doesn't work in California. Don't try this in California. And by the way, Florida, the shitty California. Don't try it there either. It works in places where you can buy properties that aren't $1 million that rent for $4,000. You have to buy what's called cash flow positive properties. So when you're 23 years old, you're collecting rent checks, paying mortgage payments, and there's money left over, it works. If you're collecting rent checks, paying mortgage payments, and you've got to pay more, that's cash flow negative, it doesn't work. VRBOs a lot of time are cash flow negative. You got to get something that's paying the bills. And I'm sure, what was his name? Not Dave Delgado. We love Dave Delgado, who is another one of these real esite guys.
This is Charles Givens, and he was old right? And he was old when he came and presented. So he must have been in his 50s or 60s when I saw him.
Cash flow positive,
right, in 1990 or whenever it was. So I'm sure he's not around much anymore. But yeah, so
not around much anymore. He's probably not around at all.
Right, exactly.
So you're raking in your engineering money, And engineering is one of the top 10 highest paying professions directly out of college. Probably was then too. So you're raking in your big time engineering money. And then you're also raking in rent money. You're working your normal job from 8 till 7 because it's a corporate culture. We all hate that corporate culture. And then you're on the weekends and in the evening doing the real estate deal.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes. And then from there, that led me to a company that, the multi-level marketing. So the A.O. Williams and those types of school companies. So I got involved in financial planning and I enjoyed that too.
Wow. So you had 4 gigs going.
Yes. And when it was, when the engineering thing started to slip because I was getting busy and had other things going on, and I sometimes wouldn't show up to work at 8 o'clock. I wouldn't get there till 10 after 8. And I kind of thought, well, what's the big deal? I work hard while I'm here and et cetera, whatever. So that
they weren't concerned about the results. They were concerned about the time. And that's a bad culture. Now, I believe in both. I show up at my office every day at 7:30. I do go mountain biking. This week, I'm clocking in 5 times a week. So I have to take off while the sun's out. But I come back. I get my 10 hours a day, which I shouldn't be doing at my age.
Right.
I believe in hard work, but I also believe in results more than hard work. They're not concerned about results at this place. And if you're listening right now and you're in the car, it's like, what's the culture of your place? And you can change it. You heard Brad say, maybe I could have changed it, or maybe it's time to move on. So you're doing the real estate gig, you're doing the multi-level marketing gig, you're doing the engineering gig. And what was the financial planning? I just can't imagine you're like an amateur financial planner that has clients. Or was it just for yourself?
Well, again, that was the multi-level thing. Is you don't know a lot, but somebody upstream of you, that's the multi-level, right? It is reasonably qualified planner. And this is back at a time when I guess technically it wasn't really financial planning. It was mutual fund sales.
Okay.
And this was in the 90s when every mutual fund went up 20% a year. Okay. And the crazy ones went up 40 and 60% in a year. So it was real, it was what it was. It wasn't great financial planning, but it got me exposed. I went and earned my CFP and, moved full force into financial planning. And then as that continued to grow, and then when I got married, the rental properties were a pain in the butt. So every time I had, someone moved out, instead of a for rent sign, I put up a for sale sign. And got out of the real estate. So then I'm, in financial planning, not specifically college planning yet, but financial planning.
Okay. So you could be going to college. You could be in high school all your life. Like I was supposed to be a lawyer. Everybody knew I was going to be a lawyer. Then you go to college, you prepare to be a lawyer. You prepare to be an engineer. Then you pop out and thank God I wasn't a lawyer because I hate lawyers. First of all, I hate them all. Second, because if you're a lawyer, you went to law school for money. It's like no lawyers that didn't go to law school for money. So the whole premise is wrong. Sorry for all those people I know that are lawyers. Brian Forbath, thanks for doing the show. Sorry about that, Sage, as well. But, if you're motivated by money, that's not a great place to be. And so you're following your path, and then all of a sudden, serendipity hits. Same guy from Apple. I got to remember his name. He said, let 1,000 flowers grow. So they would throw out the Apple computer, and then all these art people started using it for art. And it was supposed to be a business computer. And they're like, whoa, let that happen. So you're letting 1,000 flowers grow and finding these paths. And if you're listening right now on 1.5 speed, think about that. What paths are opening up in front of you? And this just keeps changing for Brad. He knows exactly what he's going to do. And then he knows exactly what he's going to do again because he loves this real estate thing and he's going to these seminars and it's his passion. Then he knows exactly what he's going to do again with financial planning. He goes and gets another degree. You can do that, or a certification to be a certified financial planner. He did that after he got out of college, after he had a job. Then he gets married. Oh my God, talk about change. Don't tell me you had kids too. Did you have kids?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
We like to joke we were on the 9-month plan. We dated for 9 months. We were married for 9 months. We were pregnant for 9 months. We had a child. Then 9 months later, we were pregnant. And 9 months later, we had another child. And then 9 months later, so forth and so on until you have 3 kids.
You have got to find a different religion. That Catholicism is killing you. Birth control is A-okay.
Had nothing to do with it. I got married old, and if we wanted to have a family, we had to get to work.
So life's changing all over the place. And if you think your life isn't going to change when you have kids, what did my father-in-law say? It's like driving down the freeway in a Ferrari and throwing an anchor out. But you keep picking up these opportunities. So you're kind of honing in. And if you're listening right now and you're worried, like my son is upstairs, what am I going to do for a living? It's kind of like bowling with the bumpers up. The ball's bouncing back and forth. It's still going in the right direction. You don't know where it's going to end up, what pin it's going to hit. You're not going to hit them all, but which one are you going to hit? And that's going to be your focus. So you're changing. You go into financial planning. And then how'd you jump to helping families figure out college financing?
Right. Well, so now college planning is a subset of financial planning. So I still do full service financial planning.
Okay.
But I started working with families on, similar to what you mentioned, where you help families. There's a huge need for people to figure out college. And I realized that nobody understood all the rules. So I started learning more about it, and I got involved in more and more college planning. And then I realized that I had done a lot of seminars on general financial planning. And I also realized seminars and workshops and material on college planning got a lot of attention. And I enjoyed doing it. So college planning is very complex, or can be, based on need-based aid and merit aid and all the different tools and so forth. And I can add a lot of value there. Most financial advisors, most accountants, most don't have a clue and are giving sometimes what I would say is flat out bad advice.
And how old were you when you got into this niche?
About 15, 20 years ago. So 35.
Oh my God. You're beyond
30?
Retirement age for this. Gen Z wants to retire by 35. Wrong. You're not going to want to retire when you are 35. Your prefrontal cortex isn't formed yet. You don't even know what you're talking about. So what you have to do is what Brad's doing here. Figure out what you enjoy. And he's bouncing back and forth down that bowling lane alley. Where can you add value? Everybody always thinks, oh, I want to do something that I'm really good at. No, that's not it. I want to do something that's really fun. No, that's not it. Where can you add value? That's the theme of finding a job. That's the theme of starting a business. Where can you add value? And you should be good at it. And you should enjoy it, because it's way easier to get out of bed if you enjoy it. But the number one thing is, where do you add value? So you've seen the seminars for real estate. Oh, I can do that too. You like speaking in front of people. You like helping people. And then you figure out, oh my God, there's this niche that nobody else is in. Hey, if you're listening right now, that's a good thing to look for. Where is there? You want some people to be in it. If there's nobody in it, maybe it's not any good, but there's this niche that's wide open that you can add value in. And so next thing you know, you've got your business, and what percent of your time is spent in this area of financial planning versus overall financial planning?
Probably 50%.
Okay.
And certainly all my marketing and all my effort of looking for clients. So now generally my new clients, it starts typically with a college plan, and then they also need to do retirement and everything else. So I don't spend a lot of time, working to find general clients. I just
so you're finding parents of college kids that haven't started planning for retirement, so they got to be at least 40.
Right.
Biologically, they got to be at least 36. But your clientele is probably 36 to 50, right? And they haven't started planning for retirement?
Well, some of them have.
Okay.
So I do a lot of college planning. Some of them are doing great. Some of them don't have an advisor yet. Some of them do.
Okay.
Some of them are do-it-yourselfers and doing, and all they need is the help with college. But I 20 or 30 or 40%, go on to do long-term financial planning and
that's how business works.
Do the college plan as well. So it works out just fine. And
if you're listening right now, you want to go into business, what can you do that adds value, that's a special niche that you're going to want to show up to work to? And then Brad throws another one in there. There's another one that can grow into more relationship. And Brad's not doing it to make money. Brad's doing it to grow into more relationship and help. And we got to get into what you do because I could talk all day about this crazy entrepreneur stuff because I love it. And I could crack jokes about lawyers all day long. And we haven't even got into my hate of Donald Trump. And I say everything you're not supposed to say on podcasts because it's my podcast. But I do want to get into, some of your tips. And there's some things that you talked to me about before. And I know you've been sharing your insights for a long time. And I just want to shout out for your blog again. Taming the High Cost of College is a podcast. Sorry. Taming the High Cost of College podcast. You do have a blog as well. And what's the name of your company again?
Everything is at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com.
Tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. You got a podcast there. You got a blog there. So you say that many students can attend a private college for the same price as a public college. Now, I don't know that private college is better or worse. A lot of public colleges are far better than a lot of private colleges, but sometimes the size of a private college is smaller. To your point about coming in from Mayville, sometimes you go to the big city and there's this huge college and, the classroom you're in is bigger than the entire high school you're in. You go to a private school that may have smaller classes. So there's reasons to look at private schools. And sometimes people don't look at them all at all because of financial reasons. How is it possible to attend a private college for the same price as a public university?
Right. Well, so the average public school is 28,000. The average private school is about 60,000 right now. But the average aid and scholarships at a public school is about 8,000, and it's 24,000 at the private school. So you get a lot more off, and that's average. So for kids that are above average, the amount of scholarships and discounts that you might get may essentially make the cost of a private school the low cost option.
So do public schools sometimes not give 100% aid, but a lot of private schools do?
That is a true statement.
Okay.
I wouldn't say a lot. So there's about 80 or 100 schools that meet 100% of need 100% of the time.
Okay.
And there's thousands of schools that essentially gap you, where they say, based on your financial situation, you do need a $20,000 of scholarship, but we don't have it. So here's 10 or 5 or 0. And public schools especially do that, right? The typical public state school doesn't have a lot of money to give you. They're going to offer you the federal aid that you're entitled to, the state aid you're entitled to. And that might be it at most public schools because they just don't have huge budgets for that type of thing. But they're a low cost leader to begin with. So they're starting at the average of 28.
Yeah.
And offering you federal aid and that kind of stuff. Whereas a typical private school is starting much higher. But and again, the typical private school knows that you have the option to go to a state school. So it's a really tough sell for, you mentioned Tulane. So it's a tough sell for Tulane to say, well, we're 75,000 and your local school, your private school or your public school is going to be 30. That's tough.
Yeah.
So they offer aid and scholarships, and it's especially for the kids that are the right kids, the ones that they're targeting, where they might get 40,000 off on average of an 80,000 school. So their net is 40. Yeah. So then dad can look at that and say, well, 29 versus 40, that's at least in the ballpark. 29 versus 85 is crazy.
Yeah. Tulane is ranked number 40 in the nation. UCLA is ranked number 21 in the nation. Tulane's a great school, cost $92,000 or something like that all in. UCLA costs $50,000 all in, and all in is room, board, books, classes. Tuition at Tulane, I think 66 grand. Tuition at UCLA is 22 grand. I mean, UCLA is a more prestigious school, is a better school. And Tulane wants to draw some of the people away from UCLA because of the culture or whatever it is. 93% of students at Tulane get some form of financial aid for exactly what Brad's saying. Same with my daughter goes to Northeastern. Same thing there. Also ranked number 40. Thank God my kids aren't fighting about that. But like 93, 94% of people get financial aid. And I didn't realize why. So if you miss what Brad just said, they know they're competing with the private schools, and they know that if they're the same ranked or maybe even lower ranked, if that they're not going to get you in if they're 3 times as expensive. So they offer aid. And so that was my first question was, how is that possible? And you explained that pretty well. But then you get into how do you get the aid? And, I help people get into college. When it comes to filling out the FIFSA and the FAFSA, I kick them over to my wife. So I'll probably work with, this year it's only 3 or 4 students. Next year it's probably 3 or 4 students, but it was like 10 or 11 a year. And I don't know anything about these documents you got to fill out. I know that 100% of people have to fill them out because you can't even get a merit scholarship if you don't fill them out. But I kick them over to my wife and she kind of takes over then. Shout out to Jill Stewart for taking care of the kids. What do you do to get the money? What's the process? When do you have to do it?
Right. So generally, you fill out financial aid forms for the first time, fall of your senior year of high school, and then you repeat that each year for each year of college. And it's based on the income of assets of mom and dad and the student. If, again, we're talking about the segment of students that are rolling out of high school and going directly to college, which is less than half of college students, by the way. The other half of college students are adult learners and kids that are living at home and going to wherever, and all kinds of different ways to get an education.
Yeah.
But, the core of the people that I'm working with generally are the, parents had a great time in college back in the day and they want that for their kids. So now we're trying to figure out, how do we make that happen? And obviously prices went up dramatically since you and I went to college.
Yep.
And it's a bigger deal. But so in general, you fill out the financial aid forms and they crunch the numbers, and that helps them determine need-based aid. But there's 3 ways to get scholarships from a typical college. There's the automatic merit scholarships. If you're, if you have a 3.5 GPA and a test scores like this, you'll get 10,000. If you have a 3.8 GPA and test scores like that or better, you'll get 20,000. So forth and so on. And they're automatic. And sometimes they print that chart right in the website, and you can go look it up and say, all right, well, based on my statistics, I should get 20 or 30 or whatever it is. Most of the time that chart is in the desk drawer at financial aid, and you don't get to see how it works exactly. They're just going to give you an offer after you apply, and they say, okay, well, you qualify for 15,000. You'll never know that if you'd have gotten just a little bit better, you could have gotten 20.
Do you have to ask for that?
No, it's an automatic merit scholarship based on the fact that you applied at a lot of schools.
Okay.
And then there's the need-based aid. When you fill out your financial aid forms, then they crunch the numbers and say, all right, you qualify for these federal programs, you qualify for these state programs. And as a college, especially at private schools, and based on your need, we'll also put some money in there. We'll give you another scholarship. So you might get $10,000 based on your grades and another $10,000 based on your finances. Not all schools give merit aid. Not all schools give need-based aid. And certainly do well with need-based aid, but sometimes, and some schools do both. So it really just depends. And that's kind of the process, right? Is, well, if you know that you're going to qualify for a lot of merit aid, then you need to understand it and focus on it. If you know you're going to qualify for a lot of need-based aid, focus on that. But as an example, Harvard and Yale and a lot of the very, very top schools don't offer merit aid. They only offer need-based aid because they essentially say, in order to get accepted, you've got to be a rock star. And we're not going to try and figure out if you qualify for additional merit aid. As far as we're concerned, everybody deserves it, and therefore nobody's going to get it. Instead, we're going to only offer need-based aid, and then they're very generous. I've seen families earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year get substantial need-based aid.
Yeah, sometimes they'll pay for your college. They'll pay for your apartment. They'll write you a check for room and board and books and travel. I've heard of people getting, after their apartment and after their school was paid for, getting a check for $1,700 a month at some of those schools to pay for food, books, activities. So
right, exactly. Right. So they can be very generous, but that's the top 100 schools. The rest of the schools work very differently. So, if you have a kid that's, top 10% of the class and good test scores or good test optional candidate or whatever it might be, and they can run in that crowd, they have, a kid that can get into Harvard can get into a lot of places. If the family earns $1 million, Harvard's going to say, you can afford to pay for it all, therefore you will. And some people that earn $1 million, would say, well, wait a minute, Just because I can doesn't mean I want to.
And maybe you can't, because $1 million minus taxes is 450 grand, and you got a house and you've got cars, and Harvard's $120,000. Gets a little crazy.
Right, exactly. So then you look at other schools and say, well, the kid that's, again, that academically strong could be the presidential scholar and go for free at a school that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Somewhere, for sure.
Yeah.
But then you have to make that decision of, do I want to pay for Harvard or not? And again, Harvard is prestigious enough where they can say, we're full price, take it or leave it. And most people will take it. And they're going to fill up with people with their checkbook out, willing to write the big checks. But that, again, that's only the top schools. As you move down the pecking order, a lot of schools that don't have that strong of a name brand are not going to be able to demand full price and fill up. So that's why they start offering all these different versions of aid where they have to be, again, within the ballpark of what other schools might be. Harvard can say, we're crazy expensive and we're worth it. A lot of other schools can't say that entirely.
So let me see if I got what you're saying. So there's need-based aid. You got to fill out the forms every year. The first time you fill it out, it's always in the fall, right? They're due by, say, when? When are they due?
First time it's the fall. If you're a returning student, they give you more grace and you've got an extra few months to get it done.
Okay. So you got to know when they're due. I believe they're due by December the first time you do it. You got to figure out when they're due. Need-based, you have to fill them out. If you want merit-based, I believe you still have to fill out the financial aid forms. Am I right about that? Yep.
That's a good rule of thumb. It's more work to figure out if you should or shouldn't do it than to just do it. The financial aid forms are getting easier and easier. So
yeah, just fill them out the first year before you go to school. Fill them out by December 1st, I'd say, but check on the deadline. That's
there's definitely earlier deadlines if you go early decision, early action, and that kind of stuff. So
so
your deadline could be as early as November 1, typically.
Yeah, look it up, or you shouldn't even be going to college. And then there's automatic merit, which is different at different schools. Some people don't offer it at all. And so what you're saying is find the chart, go talk to your school, and you get automatic merit when you're in college too. So maybe you need a 3.3 to get a merit scholarship, and you've got a 3.292. And all you got to do is go to the library for 2 more hours and you're getting 10 grand next semester. So know what the scale is. Get the person to pull it out of the drawer in the financial aid. Is the third form of financial aid sports related?
Well, the third one is, again, that from the colleges themselves is you do something extra. A lot of colleges have those kids that are usually it's named after somebody that donated a lot of money, or the presidential scholar or the provost club or whatever it is. And those kids are getting 100% tuition covered, or they're getting 100% tuition and room and board. And, a lot will apply, 10 will win, or something like that, right? Or they have a couple different programs, one for this or that, right? There's also the athletes and that kind of stuff too, that can also get full rides if they're in the right sports and that kind of stuff, but certainly not guaranteed. Basketball and football, everybody in the top teams, the famous teams are probably getting a full ride. But if you're a rower or wrestling or something like that, there's a good chance, even at a D1 school, that you don't get a full ride because they may not have enough money to go around, and they might give everybody a half scholarship or give the really, really strong best athletes the full rides, and everybody else gets less than full to whatever they have to do to actually get you to come. So it's a
lot of times, especially around where I live, this town called Aliso Viejo, they just sell their kids, like selling their kids to the devil, to Little League. And they spend tens of thousands of dollars going around the country playing Little League, trying to get a scholarship. And then they don't get one. And I keep telling them, like, quit focusing on sports, get your kid to have a job, be balanced, do sports, do work, do study, do all of the above. They're more likely to get a scholarship than they are playing Little League, but they don't listen to me. So there's the something extra scholarship, which if you're listening right now and you're in college, figure out what the something extra scholarships are. Go talk to the dean. Maybe you'll get a reference letter out of the dean just for talking to him later in life. Maybe you'll get recognized for an award. I went to the Tulane graduation. All these kids are getting awards. They're probably the ones that are coming in asking, what do I need to do to get X? What do I need to do Y? What do I need to do to stand up and shine? Maybe you could be one of the 10 out of 10,000 that get one. So find out what the something extra scholarship is. Find out fill out your need-based forms on time. Check on the automatic merit. learn what you might qualify for, because knowledge is power. And if you're 0.002 away from a GPA away from getting a merit scholarship, you can get it. If you need to go do XYZ to get a different type of scholarship, you can get it. And there might still be from your old high school some of those scholarships that my daughter's really good friend Vanessa won. She won like every scholarship they had. They had like 20 scholarships from people in the business community and different things. Why did she win them all? Because she was hungry and she went out there and applied for them all. So private school can be cheaper than public school. There's all this money out there. And another thing I saw on your website, just we'll mention the website again, Taming the High Cost of College.com. That if you own a business, and I have a lot of my listeners either own a business or will own a business, how does owning a business affect college finances? What I know how my kids think of it. They think, oh, dad can pay because he owns a business. But besides that, what are the advantages that business owners can use?
Right. So there's a lot of tax strategies that business owners can use. As an example, hiring the kids in the business, and you pay them and they don't pay much in taxes, and then they use their money. Now, theoretically, they need to do do work in the business. But like my kids have always helped me with things like laminating. My older boys are very computer literate, so they built computers for my business, and they're my tech support, and I pay them well for it. And then they have money for college instead of spending my money for college, and they don't pay much in taxes because they don't have a lot of income compared to me.
They're independent.
Now, just recently, there's here in Wisconsin, we're actually allowed as a business owner to deduct contributions to 529 plans for our employees. Well, that's a great new rule that all of a sudden I think I'm going to be giving my employees 529 money, which are my kids.
Yeah.
And get some tax benefits. But also on the financial aid side of things, it's based on your income and assets. Some business owners have some control over their income. I'll take that bonus this year instead of that year. I'll bill that client this year instead of that year. And it can have a difference where you can say, all right, I'm going to, plan ahead and figure out need-based aid and see how and where I qualify. So there's a lot of, what I tell people is there's the general college planning that everybody needs to do. You need to visit, you need to test, you need to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. You need to understand need-based aid and merit aid. But then there's reasons where your life might get more complicated. You own a business, so now you can say, well, I can make my salary whatever I want it to be. What should I want it to be? Well, I don't know. Let's do now you have to work, figure it out. There's complications around divorced and blended families. That can get much more complex. There's complications. I've had a few families where they get an inheritance, where the sudden money kind of changes things midstream. And there's ways you can mitigate the damage. There's ways you can then use that to pay for college. There's great planning opportunities for that. If you've got the high achieving kid, or if you've got the athlete, that makes things more complicated. If you've got twins or triplets or quads, and I've had a number of those, where you're trying to do this, times 3 or 4 all at the same time, that's, more challenging. You get some benefits potentially having multiple kids in school at the same time, but you also have to do, much more visits or figure it, again, it just gets more complicated and more overwhelming. So, those are all, the way it is. And there's lots of strategies and tactics, right?
So if someone goes onto your website, there's little avenues that they can dig into on each of these topics specifically for their particular case study.
Exactly. And I've got free materials there, the cost of colleges by state, that show you not only the price of college list, but the average net price based on income. So you can say, oh, well, look, this school that's normally 75, your income is low, it's actually 10. Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Whereas this school that's 7, NYU is less generous than Harvard. They're both really expensive, but their net cost at various incomes looks a lot different.
Yeah. As
an example,
as an entrepreneur and as someone that's been in the business world for a while, I will say that if you get into Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, one of these top 10 schools, and it costs a bit more, I would say pay the money, figure it out, because I have a feeling you're going to get a lot more money out of school. That's my personal experience. After that, though, It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter if you go to DePaul or UCSB or Platteville or Madison. What matters is, do you have a place where you're going to thrive? Because if you're in, Tulane and you're not going to thrive there, you're just wasting money. You're better off going to a school that maybe not as prestigious. And it's about finding your tribe, and it's about, doing your tours, even if it's only virtual, doing your tours, going on Reddit. And I hate Reddit. Reddit sucks. Reddit's a bunch of trolls, but go see what the trolls are saying. Go see what the Instagram pictures. I hate Instagram too. Not about what you're eating or how nice your butt looks in a bikini. It's about what you do for others. But you can use those tools to help figure out where your tribe is, where you're going to fit in best, where you're going to thrive. That's the most important. Outside of Harvard, I know a lot of Harvard and Princeton and Stanford people. You may get an extra 0 on there. It covers a lot of bills later in life. But outside of that, I'd say, hey, focus on where you're going to thrive. And Brad, I told you that we'd be done by 10 o'clock on this Friday afternoon. We always record on Fridays, Friday afternoon for you, Friday morning for me. We're running out of time. So I'm not even going to ask you what your biggest sacrifice was early in life. I am going to say thank you so much for all your information. There's a lot more information at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. They got the podcast. They got the blogs. They got everything you need. Check it out. Thank you for helping these 20-somethings and 30-somethings and 40-somethings that may be changing where they're going in life. Pay for college, pay for grad school, pay for university. It's been wonderful having you on the Edge of Excellence today.
Hi, thanks for having me.